Habemus baby. Alright, so if you follow me already on my main channel, I made an entirely dedicated video on the announcement that we now have a baby. A baby boy, so officially I'm a dad. So if you want to know all the details that we felt like sharing, we still kind of lean a little more on the private side, but there were things that we thought were appropriate, so we shared them about the future, about what how we want to raise him. And I mean, we'll raise him Christian. That's one thing that I said on the video. But apart from that, we said a lot of things about it. And so if you want all the details about that, how the pregnancy went and the experience and all that, you can check out the video on the main channel. But for this one, since it's a language related channel, I wanted to talk more about the idea that we plan on raising our child bilingual. So when we say bilingual, we mean that he will be hopefully native to both English and Italian. Obviously, because me being Italian, my wife being American, this shouldn't be difficult to do. However, it's something that sometimes parents do fail to do, not only because they don't even try, oftentimes, just speak English in the house, even though maybe the parents could speak the original language of wherever they came from, or wherever one of the parents came from, or so sometimes they just don't do it, and then it's too late when the child is like 10 or 12. Or sometimes they do want to, but they don't know how to, and so perhaps they just send the child to like one of these schools that doesn't really work because they just learn poetry and stuff like that. We're not going to do that. So here's what we're going to do. First, what are we going to teach him? Well, I expect him to speak English as an American, obviously, because he's an American citizen. So will I be very soon, even though I don't sound like it. But I will be very soon. It's in the process. I imagine he'll mimic his mum's accent and the accent of the area where he's been raised. When it comes to me, even though I am from Sicily, I speak both. I speak Italian, standard Italian. In fact, I even studied diction, like the same kind of studies that, say, voice actors have to learn in order to lose regional accents for the not in general in everyday speech, but for when they dub, for instance, or do theater and that kind of stuff. I studied that in my 20s, so I can speak Italian in a very standard way. And at the same time, I also speak the Sicilian language. I used both as a child. My family was more Italian speaking, so the language we used in the house the most was Italian. But I did use Sicilian with my friends and schoolmates, so there's that. Which one am I going to teach to my child? Italian, 100%. I'm teaching him standard Italian with a few words here and there that are Sicilian, just for the connection, right? For the mostly used words in Sicily that we sometimes as Sicilian speakers use even when we use Italian. Because in Sicily, we switch a lot. We switch, and that's not just a peculiarity of Sicily itself, but it is a peculiarity of almost every region of Italy, because every region has their own regional variety, which oftentimes is divided into town varieties and city varieties, distinctive in nature. And oftentimes people will speak the local regional language, but also they will speak Italian, depending on the situation, and sometimes they mix. And mixing usually means there are some favored words that are so commonly used that they still appear even when you speak entirely Italian sentences. One example in Sicilian would be the word amuni, which means let's go. In Italian, that would be andiamo, but in Sicilian, it's amuni. So even when we're speaking Italian, this is so easy to use because it's short. I don't know, it sounds nice. So we use it all the time. So I'll teach him that one, 100%. And I'll teach him a few other selected words the Sicilians use a lot, even when we speak Italian, but then the entirety of the rest of the language that I'm going to teach him will be Italian. And the reason why I chose that is because, of course, Italian allows him to speak and communicate with as many people as possible that speak Italian. It is the common language. Whereas if he only knew Sicilian, then he could only speak it with Sicilians. And that's, of course, not great. Also, for work possibilities in the future, if he wants to use his Italian skills, then it's definitely more usable than a regional language. We could say, unfortunately, if we want to talk a little bit about social linguistics and the challenges that dialects, if you will, if you want to use that word, it's a little antiquated at this point, a little inappropriate, I think. But if you want to use that word, then dialects have got difficult time when it comes to how they're used, when they're used, how they're supposed to be used. Interesting discussion for a dedicated video, but suffice to say, I think Italian is the language that I want to teach him in the most standard way, clean way possible. Now that we decided what we're going to do, how are we going to do it? So my plan is to start immediately. In fact, we started even in the womb. The child was there and I would speak to him, through the belly. both in Italian, in English, we did that, familiarizing a little bit. And then I don't know if there is scientific research on whether or not he could hear that, but we still did it anyways because you never know. Then since he was born, now we're already switching. So the idea is that generally, we won't make it like too strict, but in general, he will speak English to mommy and he will speak Italian to daddy. So mom will speak to him mostly, almost exclusively in English, but occasionally mom will also use because she likes using Italian anyway, she'll use the occasional sentence and phrase, and then sometimes we do speak Italian to each other, and most of the times we speak English to each other, but sometimes for her to practice, we like to use sentences in Italian. He'll hear that in the house. Also, but mostly she'll speak English to him, and she'll expect him to speak English to her. With me, however, I'll try to mostly speak Italian to him, so I will tell him things like, vieni qua, forza, mangiamo, vuoi mangiare, hai fame? I'll do that in Italian, and then I'll expect him to speak to me in Italian as well, although occasionally we will use English too. So it's not going to be too much of a strict rule because I don't want him to feel like he's being pressured. We want it to become an organic thing. It's just what happens. But we won't like punish him if he doesn't exactly always follow this absolute rule, because I think that could be in fact off-putting, and we don't want that. That's a little bit of the psychology of it, if you will, from a pedagogical standpoint. So that's the idea. We want him to be surrounded in the language, so we will switch. Sometimes we will put a little cartoon, and by the way, we've got a little VCR with an old school CRT TV, and we're going to show him VHS tapes. We're so going to do that with cartoons. Anyways, they will be both. Sometimes they will be in English, sometimes they will be in Italian. So he once again familiarizes with colors and sounds for nature and words for like animals and forest and grass and the river and mountain, the sea and that kind of stuff. And keep that sort of double immersion. Because here is the thing. As someone who was brought up with two communication systems, and the reason why I'm saying that and not two languages is because there will be the clown from Italy that will say Sicilian doesn't count, it's not a language. Which is stupid, because one, it absolutely is. Sicilian, just like other regional varieties of Italian, is not a language derivative of Standard Italian. It's a dialect of Latin. It's a sister language. It's just that Italian, as the standard, was raised above the rest. But Sicilian absolutely comes directly from Latin, with influences from other languages, whether it be a little bit of Greek, whether it be a little bit of Arabic, and so far, and a little bit of Spanish. In fact, I think it has a stronger, there's Norman French a little bit in there. You can tell by the way we say some things. Like, I'll give you an example. You know how in Italian you say noi and voi to mean we and you, plural. In Sicilian we say noatri, vuatri, which means us others and you others, which is kind of like nosotros and vosotros. So you see, it's kind of closer to that. Massive announcement. Check this out. You're going to love it. As many of you know, or at least I think you know, I've been writing a book, my new journey into becoming an author. I've mentioned this on a few videos and on X, but this book was indeed crowdfunded. Now, any person who has donated or will donate to the crowdfunding will receive a full audiobook, and this is crowdfunding exclusive. So, as a way to say thank you to the people that have donated and supported my dream of becoming an author, if you have a minimum of $5 donation, you will receive the entirety of the audio file of the book, recorded by me with my voice, no AI involved, as a crowdfunding exclusive reward. This applies retroactively, so for all 262 donors that I've had so far, you'll get this, and anyone who decides to donate $5 or more, thank you very much, never expected, always appreciated, then you will be guaranteed a audio file of the book by the end of the crowdfunding campaign. Important, once the crowdfunding campaign is over, this audiobook version will not be made for sale. So this is once again crowdfunding exclusive. It's a perk. If you're interested in the audiobook, click the link in the description, and thank you so much. Yeah, but then we have words like uscutu, which is the shield, a lot closer to scutum in classical Latin than it would be to lo scudo in Italian. Suffice to say, it doesn't matter if you really want to count it as a separate language or if you want to say it's inferior and it's a dialect. Either way, it's a different communicative system with different grammar rules, with different words and vocabulary, and different accent and pronunciation patterns. What this means is that regardless of what label we use, what happens is that in my life, I grew up with the idea of you can call this with this word or with this other completely different word oftentimes. So like I knew as a child even that you could say salire to go up or acchianare in Sicilian to go up. Or I could say guardare to look or tagliare to look in Sicilian. So there are a lot of words some words sound very related, other words are completely different. And other words, the Sicilian version is more archaic. So like in Italian, we tend to say comprare, to buy, but in Sicilian we say accattare, which it's not that it's different. Italian does have the word accattare. In fact, we find it in the Bible. It's just that it's a little archaic sounding or regional sounding these days. So, but Sicilian maintains some of these words that are older in nature because I guess the fact that it's in an island, a bit like, in fact, Sardinian even more so, but the fact that it's an island tends to be more linguistically conservative with older sounds and syntax patterns. In Sicilian, we tend to put the verb at the end, at least in emphatic form, something that doesn't happen in Italian, but absolutely did happen in Latin. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not confusing. You just grow up with the idea of, oh, there's multiple ways to say the same thing, which does happen already, even in a single first language. There are multiple ways to say the same thing in English as well, and this just adds one more. So we're going to do that, and technique-wise, I think what's very important is that we do it within the first 3 years. So from birth to year 3, we're going to be really onto it because that should, in theory, map the pronunciations into his mind. Because after the 3rd year, some research suggests that this window starts shrinking and the ability of the brain to actually acquire native-like pronunciation begins to decrease. Now, I don't think this is debated, I don't think it's a close-cut barrier. I think it's more of a tapering away your malleability or ability to acquire sounds natively, and this may change between child and child, but definitely we want to make sure that within that window we expose him to so much sound that at the end of the day he should be able to have zero accent when he speaks Italian, even though English will be his primary language. At least that's what I'm aiming at. A complete fluency that a child would have. And of course, even after year 3, we're going to continue to maintain this. It will take a little willpower, but it's on us, isn't it? Because the child will do what we do. So if in the house we generally switch between, hey, what do you want for dinner? Facciamo un po' di pasta. If we do that, it will be normal to him. Now, sometimes some educators do this, and you should tell them to go get lost if they do, is that they will tell you, but the child could get confused. Yeah, no, I don't care. Personally, like even if he gets a little confused with spelling, I mean, not that I care if he can he can learn how to read and write Italian later in life because it's very easy anyways. So I don't need to teach him that. Right now, he can focus on reading and writing in English and just speaking Italian, I don't care. But this idea that, no, he could get confused, he could use a word in Italian with someone who might not understand it, I honestly do not care. It's fine, not a big deal. The other person will say, sorry, I didn't understand, and we will teach him, no, with grandpa, you've got to use English, or with children at school, you've got to use English. We just use Italian in the house. So we'll teach him that. It's a matter of, occasional little inconsistent we might need to work on. That's fine, but I'm not taking it away from my son. I'm not taking away something that he can have for literal free, not to mention. I truly believe that if you are brought up bilingual, then your ability to acquire multiple languages in the future is already primed. Whereas if you are only monolingual, it might, not necessarily, but it might be a little harder for you. And I want him to have this, regardless of what other people say. So if there is some relative as well that oversteps a boundary and tells me how to raise my son linguistically, I'll tell them to get lost. No half measures. Be like, my son, this is decided also because I wanted to be able to speak to my dad. Unfortunately, my mom is not with us anymore. I really wish she was. She would have loved this. But I'm sure she's watching from heaven. But when it comes to like my dad, my cousins, my uncles, when we take him to Sicily or when we take him to Italy for the relatives in the north, to the north of Italy, then we want him to be able to have friends, to make friends, to speak to the cousins, to understand the family. And I don't think anyone has the right to come and tell us, no, he should only use English because this is America. Fine, he'll use English primarily. I agree with that, by the way, with the overall sentiment. But he's an Italian American. He's an Italian American. So the Italian aspect, the root to our literature, to our history, to our language, to our culture, to our food, it's going to be there. It's not going to be taken away. Because again, I want him to take back to Italy and experience the country and the culture as an insider. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share. Let me know what you think, if you agree, disagree, and thank you for watching. And if you have any suggestion, let us know in the comments. Bye.